What's going on, guys? So my clutch pedal squeaks every time I shift. Now I'm not talking about outside the FJ Cruiser. It can be heard from outside, the squeaking, the sounds like little canaries or rocks in a tin can. That's a video that I addressed about a month ago. I actually had to take my transmission out and change out my throwout bearing so that I essentially upgraded it to an internal hydraulic throwout bearing, so I got rid of the slave cylinder. But that video is in the description. It details that whole process. What I'm talking about in this video is fixing the squeak that's in the clutch pedal. And that squeak sounds like this every time you shift. Press the clutch in, release the clutch. It's been doing this for 5 years. I know. 5 years. I've actually gotten used to it, so I don't even think about it anymore. It's just become a common thing that I hear every time I press the clutch pedal in. And I've always known that I have to do something like grease up the spring that pulls the clutch pedal back up, or something like that. Or maybe it's the little hole that the spring goes into. It's in the metal assembly of the clutch pedal. We are going to see. So I'm going to start taking out the interior pieces that I need to take out, because it's easier for me to video, and two, it's easier for me to investigate what's going on. So the actual clutch spring assembly is kind of back here. It's high up. If you put your head down on the floorboard, like down here, you can actually look up and then see where it's at. But yeah, to get this panel off, I'm actually going to take off this carefully, because these break, and a lot of people, those are broken already. So I'm going to take this off carefully. I've got my screwdriver in a spot where I'm going to pry it up from, because this is in the way of taking this off. So there's a little 10mm bolt that you can kind of see that's right in there behind my finger. To start taking this out, I have a screwdriver that I've put in this way. Don't put it in underneath here and pry up. Pry it up from where I have it, because if you pry it up from here, it's less likely to break because you're pulling it straight off this way versus pulling it down this way. And then I'm really just pulling up, and nothing's broken. Really, you just want to get this plastic nut off. So this thing, you just have to unscrew that. And now you can kind of pull up on this, but to avoid breaking this, I'm just going to put my finger in here. So now that that's up, I can pull this out, because you want to pull it forward towards you. You don't want to try to pull it this way. I'll show you why. The grooves here and here, there's plastic that guides into them, so if you try to pry it this way to the right, then you end up bending that plastic. So you don't want to do that. So I'm having trouble getting mine off. Ignore these wires. These are basically for reverse. I have reverse cameras that are installed on this, and I'll be doing another video pretty soon on upgrading my reverse cameras, which is really changing out everything in that system. So that'll be coming soon, so you can check that link in the description whenever it's available. But you have a 10mm bolt here, 10mm bolt there. I'm just using a 10mm deep socket. You don't have to use a deep socket, but the deep socket does make it a little bit easier to get in there. Yeah, I think I smacked my camera with the cover. And if you're wondering what these extra wires are that are coming around my fuse box, they go to this, which I have an installation video on, and this wire that is soldered to the top of this was an open fuse spot. This fuse is turned on whenever the ignition is turned on, and it goes off whenever the ignition is shut off. So I use this to trigger my relays for all of my off-road lights, so that I don't leave my off-road lights on. Looks like it's held in by 4 10mm bolts. So that one that I just loosened, this one that I just loosened, this one, and this one. This is mine. This is not stock. I'm definitely going to dress up my wires that are down here. So I'm going to remove this fuse block. So I'm going to remove this fuse block here. It looks to be held by one 10mm bolt and two 10mm nuts. One there and one up here. You can't really see, it's kind of up above. Okay, with a 6-inch extension, looks like it is reachable. And that's up there. And there's the third and final bolt securing it. So let's see if I can move it. So be careful when you're pulling this down. You don't want to make your wires rub on something like a sharp piece of metal, like that you have there. So as you can tell, this spring that is what's squeaking. So that's the noise that you hear whenever you press the pedal. That is what I'm going to try to fix. So I'm going to try to identify exactly where that squeak is coming from and then grease up or do whatever I have to do. Initially I thought that it was the spring rubbing on the spring and that was what was making the creaking noise, but as you press the spring it looks like there's no parts of the spring that are touching other parts of the spring. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to attempt to grease up this part of the spring that goes into the clutch pedal, the actual bracket that goes down to the clutch pedal. So I grabbed myself 2 zip ties. What I'm actually going to do, I don't really need 2, I just grabbed 2 just so that in case one fails, the other one will still hold. I want to zip tie the 2 ends of the spring together so that when I take it out of the clutch pedal bracket, the spring doesn't spring out and then get hard to line back up again. To make this easier on yourself, zip the tie together first to where you have just enough of a loop to slide it over, because apparently you can just slide it straight over the bottom and then pull. Still hard to do with one hand. And zip tie number 2 the same way. I've essentially pried out this side of the spring by using this right side of the spring as something to pry against. Now I have this side of the spring exposed enough to where I can put grease around the part of the spring that goes into this assembly. So I'm going to put some white lithium grease on there. And this is my test attempt at getting my hand up without putting grease on anything else. Okay, so I'm going to use my index finger. I got too much, but whatever. It's going to get an extreme coating. Go up, up, up. And, well, so much for carefully. I just got it on my some other stuff. On the back side, put some more grease on. Now it's all the way around that side of the spring. Some more grease on my finger. There we go. So I'm going to push the spring back in with a screwdriver. Yeah. Spring's back in. I'm going to cut those 2 zip ties off. Let's see if that made any kind of a difference. That's good. I have a quiet spring again. I think I found the source of the problem. The part of the spring that holds into the metal bracket, since I slid that out and then slid it back in, it looks like the whole reason that it was squeaking was because that plastic grommet that's there, if you could see it, that plastic grommet is actually broken. So that would be the reason why it's squeaking. But right now I have grease on it as a temporary fix. I'll probably end up making a video in the future replacing that that white part altogether, the little grommet. I'll have to find the part number, and then yeah, But for now, the squeak is gone. It's still rubbing metal on metal, but there's grease in between the metal, so it's all good. I'm done with that. So I am going to put the interior back together. I'm going to time lapse that. I've already explained everything. So this last part of the video will just be a time lapse of me putting the interior back together. But that's it for this video. If you want to watch the time lapse putting it back together, or if you trust yourself, then go for it. But thanks a lot for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. God bless you guys.